Hey, welcome back to the CIV Podcast. We are on our third conversation with Lawrence Stoyanowski, who is a marriage therapist practicing Gottman methodology and modalities. And we've had some great conversations in the past. If you haven't had an opportunity to check those last two episodes out, we really want to encourage you to go look at those. We talk about what is marriage therapy, who should attend marriage therapy, why should you go, and then we kind of briefly talked about the Sound Relationship House, some of the practices there, and these next two episodes, we're really going to dive into the Sound Relationship House. We're going to talk about dating, marriage, conflict resolution, what it's like to build kind of the healthy habits in a relationship. So you don't want to miss that and catch up on the last two as well. So Lawrence, today I wanted to talk to you about a question that I often get, and it's a question that I know probably many pastors get if they're pastoring any congregation with young people in it. One of the questions that's often asked is like, what should I look for in a partner? So if I am a single person and I'm trying to find my partner for life, right? What should I be looking for? And yeah, we'll start with that one, and then we'll go to the next question after that.
Okay. Well, it's kind of interesting because everybody has a different kind of list or criteria. And I've had people in my office show me a list that they did when they were teenagers or in their early 20s, and they have a list of what they need in their partner. And I find that very interesting because most of us don't even think about stuff like that. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but they have some real strong kind of needs or goals, but I think it's kind of cool because they want to be prepared. The only problem is that a lot of times some of the things they're putting down or writing down are not necessarily realistic, or it won't always happen. So the thing that we've got to be open to is that there's some flexibility, some grace, some mercy around our differences. And, values are really, really important, especially if we are, people of faith. I mean, even if you're not people of faith, I think those values are important because you want to find someone who's similar to you, and so that it can come and mess with your relationship. But for people of faith, you want to find someone that has kind of the same value system around spirituality, around God, around raising our children, all that kind of stuff. Those value systems are really important. But even other little things like, money. How does my partner deal with money? How does my partner treat the waiter or waitress at the restaurant? Those may seem like small, insignificant things, but that stuff is pretty important. So there's no one absolute answer because there's a lot of there's a lot of the same kind of answers, but it can be some of these smaller things that can keep you from moving forward with that person. But that should be based on them having a real issue and going, man, I don't know if this is the right person for me. Not just that it's different than me, but there's a real character kind of difference. They can say all the right things for A, B, and C, but if D is a major thing, that may be enough to say, you know what, I think I better keep looking. But at the same time, some people are too kind of hyper vigilant, and we want you to be vigilant, but we don't want you to be hyper vigilant because then we're looking for too much. We're setting too high of goals, and that will make it sometimes almost impossible for your prospective partner to meet those,
to fit into that criteria. Because one of the things that's interesting about, it's not wrong to have a criteria, right?
No.
But one of the things that's interesting is that if you are really stringent about how much they fit into your criteria, you might find someone that checks all your boxes, but if they have their own boxes to check off, might you be the one that checks off all of their boxes, right? And I know one of the things that I really love the Gottmans talk about I think this will come into when we talk about conflict management and stuff
Right.
like that. But, whatever you marry, you're always going to marry into a set of problems.
Right.
No single person is ever going to be perfect. So if you have, person A with problems 1, 2, and 3, and you decide, person B doesn't have problems 1, 2, and 3, but they probably have problems 5, 6, and 7.
Right.
4, 5, 6. I skipped a number there. But there's, no matter what we choose or who we choose, there's always going to be someone that has something that they can work on. And inevitably, we have something
Absolutely.
we can work on. Right?
Yeah, that's, I love that saying. It sounds a little corny to some people, but, the perfect marriage is two imperfect people never giving up on each other, right? So it's that whole, that's what we do, and we keep working through our stuff.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's what we want people. We don't want people to give up or give up prematurely.
Yeah. And
one of the most important things that I believe is taking your time and not taking too long of time. And what I mean by that is, I see people get married way too quickly. And, it's kind of interesting because people say, yeah, we dated for 3 years, but they dated long distance and they saw each other once a month. That's totally different than two people that live in the same area and see each other several times a week.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So, I say a year and a half to 2 years should be kind of the minimum that we kind of date to make sure. I mean, it's always possible. And it also depends upon the quantity of time in that moment. This is maybe an example where quantity might be just as important as quality. So some people spend a ton of time through a year and they are sufficiently get to know each other. But the whole idea is, have you gone through moments of conflict with each other? Have you gone through moments to see how each other reacts?
Yeah.
Have you seen your partner get angry, and how did you feel about that? Did they get angry or did they get rageful? There's anger's not wrong. Anger is just a normal emotion like every other emotion. But anger mixed with the 4 horsemen, which we talked about last time, criticism, contempt, stonewalling, and defensiveness, that is when anger is wrong, and it becomes belligerence. And then it becomes really really unhealthy, and it's not acceptable. It's like then it connects to rage and whatnot like that. So
you're saying like a year and a half to 2 is kind of a good healthy range.
Yes.
Of like quality time that you spent, seeing each other regularly, experiencing.
Right.
You could call it the highs and the lows,
yes.
Right, the hills and the valleys. For someone that might be an older person that hasn't yet found the right person, right? That might seem scary because I think sometimes it feels like there's a lot of pressure to get married by a certain age or to find your partner by a certain age, or if you're not married by this age, then it almost feels like, what am I doing with my life? What would you say to someone like that? Like, because a year and a half to 2 might seem scary to some people. That's just like, well, you don't know, I'm like 32, I'm 34.
It seems too long.
It seems like a long,
well, that's part of the problem, is that we feel rushed. And when we feel rushed, we make choices that aren't necessarily good or healthy for us. And the thing is, you're hoping for the best, but you've got to go through those moments regardless to come out the other side to see. And if you're ever rushing yourself, chances are you're going to miss red flags. And you're going to make some mistakes that may be potentially devastating down the road. Right? And people always come back in my office and say, I saw those signs, I just chose to ignore them.
Wow.
Right? And so listen to your gut, right? And know that if something's not quite right, that's your amygdala telling you something's not right, you've got to fix this, and that may mean going and doing some therapy around it, or talking about it with a mentor or a pastor, or that may mean, leaving the relationship. And, I've seen a lot as well. And when I mean a lot, it happens occasionally, but it's a lot to me, is these couples where they're very clear that one does not want to have children and the other one does.
Yeah.
And the one who does believes that they can kind of not trick, but change their partner's point of view, and that their partner's going to change once they're married and life comes along. They're going to want kids, so I'm going to say, okay, I can do that, and then they change their minds down the road, and it becomes a huge issue.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, I got into this marriage. We had decided we're not going to have kids. And even if they do change their mind, just that idea that you're now trying to get me to do this, that can create a lot of issues in there as well.
Yeah.
So knowing that stuff, having those conversations are hugely important. And don't ever hope that your partner changes their mind, because it happens a lot less than we want it to, it happens a lot less than people expect it to. But then it also does major damage after children come along, and then there's these arguments and whose role is it to do this? I need you to help me out. I didn't want to have kids, so you got to really watch that. There's a lot more involved in that.
Yeah.
And it is a hill to die on. There are some black and white issues that are either yes or no, right?
Yes.
You can't have half a baby.
Yes,
So we're either going to have a baby or we're not going to have a baby.
Yeah.
And that's a major thing. That's core to who we are from both sides.
Yeah.
And if you don't figure that out, that may mean that your relationship is over and you've got to find a new prospective partner. And it's huge. And no one's right or wrong. It's just it's who they are and what they believe is good for them.
Yeah.
Now there's another thing, and a lot of people don't know this, but you can date for too long. Okay. Now there's always some exceptions to the rules, but they did these studies where couples that dated more than 5 years and then got married had an 85% divorce rate.
Wow.
Yeah.
85%.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, there's some exceptions to the rule, like one or both are going to university. They're getting their schooling first before they get married, that stuff like that. As long as they have a plan, that's good. But usually what happens in these situations is it comes down to one person saying, hey, listen, we either get married or we break up. We've got to go a direction here. If that's ever the question, 100% end the relationship. A marriage that's supposed to last for a lifetime should not come about by a stipulation like that, right?
Yeah.
And so it means that one is not ready, or they got comfortable in it and one really wants it. But if you ever have to utter those words to each other, my advice would be to say, go your separate ways.
That's probably a very hard pill to swallow. Because especially if you've invested so much time into a relationship, you almost want to see the natural progression of it. You also want to see it through. But you're saying seeing it through is the wrong thing to do, because in that case, especially when you're dating for too long, there's an 85% chance that divorce is the outcome.
Because on one side, there's a lack of commitment.
Yeah.
Right? So you're correct for the person that's committed and wants that.
Yeah.
But for the other person who isn't, man, that's playing with fire. Right?
Yeah.
And so people stay in relationships for all kinds of reasons, right and wrong. Right? It just gets comfortable. I just know who you are. It's better to know the devil I do than the devil I don't. Well, that's not quite the word, but you get my point, right?
Yeah.
And so people make some bad decisions.
Yeah. So you mentioned asking, kind of questions, for example, do you want to have kids? That's a very black and white, yes or no question. I know when Alyssa and I started dating, that was one of our first conversations, was what are your views on kids? Do you want kids? No. Because for me, I'm a 100% yes guy. I've wanted kids for forever, and I know that whoever I marry has to want kids. Otherwise, that's a deal breaker for me, right? And then even before I was dating and before I was married, I had done Prepare and Enrich, marriage, facilitation. And they have this whole workbook and homework and stuff like that. And as I was facilitating, there were questions that, it asks the couple to ask of each other. And one of the questions, or one of the feedback that I often get from couples is these questions are great. Like some of these questions we just didn't even think to ask, or didn't know to really kind of explore. So as someone, let's just say someone has kind of been dating, or they're interested in someone, they've gotten to know them. There's no real red flags. There's nothing there that's evident. That's like, deal breaker. What are some of the questions perhaps that someone should be asking in a relationship if they think this could go the distance? Like, this is something that might be healthy for us. What are the kind of questions that they should ask of their potential partner?
So so you're saying there's no red flags. It seems pretty good.
Yeah, like a healthy human being, like they're positive, they treat others well, and because they're just because someone's a nice person doesn't mean they're the right person.
Right.
For you, right. So what kind of questions should someone be asking if they have a potential with someone?
Well, I mean, it can be anything as simple as just figuring out how active you are, right? Is one person kind of a couch potato and the other person, is an athlete? That can make a difference, but those things can always be compromised.
Yeah.
But some of these things are so important to people that a compromise is not enough, even though in most situations it should be, right? Right. We talked about kids. That's one of them. Spiritual values.
Yep.
Right. Really important. And just do you have the same belief systems, and you don't even have to have the same belief systems per se, but they should be generally similar, right? Because we all, think about how our belief systems have changed at times. Even though we've been raised in the same church, certain things change, and that doesn't mean it's not, it's wrong or anything like that. We can talk about parenting. You notice how your prospective partner deals with their younger siblings, or they deal with their niece and nephews, and what's that like? So that's why time is so important, so you can observe that. And that's the truest, those provide the truest answers because you're seeing it in real time. Just because someone says something doesn't mean that's actually what they're going to do, or our subjective realities are so different that we think we're wonderful in this area, and for the other person goes, wow, that's not even close to what I'm hoping for or looking for, right? Extended family, huge. Stereotypical mother-in-law kind of thing, huge, right? And a lot of people, so anything that a couple is struggling with dating, and once again, take this with a grain of salt, there's always exceptions to the rules, but pretty much anything that they're struggling with before getting married is going to get worse after marriage. Okay? Marriage is not some kind of elixir that solves everything because we've made that commitment. No, it can make many things even worse. Okay? So it doesn't mean that there aren't some things that we kind of butt heads on, and we're going to figure out how to find compromise down the road. There's always those, but there's some big ones. Like if one person does not get along with the other person's extended family, extended family, that's a perpetual issue. That's often a gridlocked issue. Family's never going away. They're always going to be in their lives somehow. So are you okay to live with not seeing your family as much? Or I know people that say, you know what, if you love me and want to be with me, you can't see your family anymore. That's a pretty tough one, right? And I don't think that's fair. Extended family and grandkids and grandparents, right? And so I've seen every kind of combination work and every kind of combination not work. So it all depends on the people and who they are. And it also depends on the severity of how these issues came to play. There's some people that are just toxic and should not be in our lives. And it's not because we don't love them and care about them, but they take such a toll on people's lives that are close to them that it's not healthy, it's not wise, and I don't think that's what God wants us to do. So, but everybody's different in that kind of thing.
Okay.
So did I kind of off track here, or am I?
No. Yeah, you're good. Yeah, because some of those, I think you're right. Part of there's I don't want to ask it in such a way that would give someone the impression that oh, there's these 10 must-ask questions that if they can answer it correctly, they're the right one, right? Because part of what you're saying in that is that part of the questions, or the right questions, aren't just a preconceived list, but are also contrived out of the interactions that you see with your partner, like that happen over time.
Right.
There are certain, experiences or responses that you won't be able to see in a short period, that life happens, and so you want to give that time for you to experience how your partner reacts and responds to different scenarios in different life that can trigger perhaps the right questions to ask.
Right. I mean, it can be as simple as, when you have children, do you believe it's important to have them connected to their grandparents on a regular basis? Yes, no, maybe, or whatever. I mean, that can bring up a big conversation. And a lot of, so when you were doing the your
Prepare and Enrich.
Yep. What kind of questions stood out for you that you kind of remember, go, that's a good one, or that's important to?
Yeah, I really loved the questions like, what were your family traditions for birthdays?
Rituals of connection.
Yeah, so around rituals of connection, part of the reason why I really loved some of those questions were because I often found that couples had these maybe unwritten expectations. They didn't even know they were expectations of their partner, just because that's their baseline. That's what they understood.
Right.
And so they come into with the relationship with their own expectations for how things should work.
Yes.
And they've never talked about it.
No.
Because why would I talk about it? That's just life.
Right.
But then you come and you're meeting with someone who has a totally opposite view. Like, I'll even just give you like a quick example with like Alyssa and I. Alyssa loves birthdays, and like for her, birthdays were a big deal. And so we always joke about, I've dwindled her down to a birthday week versus a birthday month, right? And even then I don't do the greatest at it. But for me, my birthday is December 29th, so it falls between Christmas and New Year's. And there was never really much to do about it because everyone's busy. It's just a thing. So for me, it's like, birthdays are indifferent. I enjoy when I'm celebrated. That's a nice thing. Who doesn't love that? But I don't have high expectations.
So did you ever get a gift that was Christmas and birthday combined?
Oh, yeah.
That's not good.
Yeah, bless my parents, but yes.
That'll make you feel less than okay.
Yeah, and so I think, without being, I don't mind being vulnerable, but I think part of my lack of expectations in that regard have just been, well, you can't be disappointed if you have a lack of expectations. So as you experience these moments in your history, that's just kind of how you develop. And so for me, it's like, if nothing happens, then I expected nothing to happen. Then there's no hurt, there's no pain, there's no disappointment. But then inversely, that translates to, I typically don't expect to do anything either, right? And it's not because I don't want to, but that's just my default, right? So
let me clarify something there, because John did a bunch of research, and what he found out is that when it comes to expectations, you're going to get what you want. So if you have low expectations about a relationship, that's what you're going to get.
Yes.
And if you have higher expectations, that's what you're going to get.
Yeah.
But don't get too high of expectations mixed up with high expectations. Okay? So, when it comes to your birthday, it's about, no, I don't have any expectations around my birthday. That's something different.
Yes.
Right? That's not low expectations.
Yes.
It's just, no, I don't expect that much. Because I don't know if you remember that training you took with me where I talked about the birthdays, where the girl, the wife, she not only had one party, she had two parties. One with family, one with friends, and there was a clown and a pony to ride and streamers. This is a big deal, and this was a celebration of life.
Yeah.
And then her partner was raised in a family where birthday, you just get a kind of a slap on the shoulder, happy birthday. I don't even think there was like a gift or a card or anything. And that's what he grew up realizing. Yeah. So they were both disappointed because she did way too much for him.
Yes.
And he didn't do enough for her.
Yes.
Now those kind of things are solvable.
Yes. Yeah.
But we got to sit down and talk about them. So that is an example of something that can get better after marriage that you can talk about.
Exactly.
But say it's something major with extended family, that is something that often gets way worse.
Yeah.
But it can get better too if you deal with it appropriately. You come up with compromises that work for both of you.
Yeah.
But if you're not willing to do the work, it's going to get worse.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Right. And that's sort of like that part of what we really loved about having that conversation was realizing that for us, that, oh yeah, we come from very different experiences, right. And then some of your expectations come from pain and can be, like you said, too low expectations. And so right. We talked about, well, what do we expect from each other, right? Like what would make us happy on our birthday? And so then every year too, we also talk about like, hey, is there anything specific that you would really like on your birthday? And,
right.
You know, we find that surprise is always nice, and we try to include elements of surprise when the person we know that, like Alyssa likes surprises, so I'll do elements of surprise. But we also kind of try to be clear on our expectations so that there isn't disappointment, so that, you know, like it's not less romantic to be able to like say what you want and your partner to give it to you. Right. You know, so for us, it was just having those conversations that helped us realize, oh yeah, not everyone does things the way that my family did it. And there are different ways that I can celebrate you that aren't just the baseline that I have. Right. Right. And so that's a great question. And the other one, again, rituals too, is like, what did your family do when you were sick? You know, little questions like that kind of give you insights into how did your partner's family respond in certain scenarios? How might your partner respond based on how they felt that element of whatever, you know? And then we've built rituals for ourselves that now, okay, well, when I'm sick, this is my expectations, because, you know, when I'm sick, I've got the man cold, and it's just the worst thing that you could possibly ever experience. You know?
I empathize, brother.
Yes, yeah. I feel like many men will probably empathize with this segment, particularly that the man cold is the worst thing known to man. Right. And I say man very intentionally there, pun intended. But yeah, I think it's just having those kinds of questions that we really enjoyed, you know, and I think, like you said, just observing your partner over time can help you understand where does your partner come from, what's their family of origin and background, and some of the great questions like kids, values of faith, like parenting. Those are great questions to think about. How were you raised? And we got to talk about that. So this is not something we actually talked about before I got married, but I found out very soon into marriage, when my wife is sick, she wants to be left alone. I was trying to dote on her, ask her how she's doing. Can I bring you some soup? No. If I'm hungry, I will come out to the kitchen. I can barely walk, but I don't want you helping me. You know, I'm like, I can make this so easier for you. And I was actually offended to start with. I felt really turned away from, because I want to help you. And it kind of irritated me. But then I realized, hey, that's what she needs. That's what she wants. And if she wants anything, she'll ask, even though she rarely asks, right? Because she's very independent. And then I realized, hey, I'm sort of a lazy guy anyway, so that worked well for me. My mom doted on me, right? She took care of me and just met all my needs. So that was my expectation, because that's what I was raised with. Right? And so I think I told you before, one of my fantasies is to have this little bell that I could ring where my daughters or my wife come running to take care of me when I'm sick. Right? And just to all my needs. That's what I'm not sure I deserve that, but that's what I want. I will, for the record, state that's what I want as well. Definitely don't deserve it, but definitely want a little bell. I don't know how well that would go over, but it won't. No, it won't. We might have to come into your office if you ever see me with a bell, then I'll have to book an appointment. That's where you have to limit your expectations. Exactly. So then, as we talk about these questions and stuff like that, one of the things about with the Sound Relationship House, trust and commitment. Right. We talked very briefly about it in building love maps. Those are things that are key to any relationship. If you don't have trust and commitment, what's the point of continuing in the relationship? Right. Can you even continue in a healthy relationship? Right. I wanted to give you just some chance if there's anything more you want to talk about trust and commitment as we gear up to talking about building love maps and what they are. Anything we want to mention? So the two walls of the Sound Relationship House is, the first one is commitment, and that's how I explain it, is that this is just kind of the ultimate goal, that we're committed to each other, we've got each other's back, we don't compare each other negative or positively to others, real or imagined.
we only compare ourselves to ourselves, and we look at ourselves it's sort of like golf. What I love so much about playing golf is that it's just about you and your own score, and you don't play with another team usually. And it's just about you. That's kind of how I look at it in a relationship. It's about us and what we want, because whenever you bring two people together, you create a new culture. And we take with us into our relationships things that we felt were good and healthy from our family of origin, and we reject the ones that we don't feel were necessarily good or healthy or that we liked. And that's what's so great about every kind of relationship, is that we get to decide what we want for ourselves and each other. So that's the ultimate goal, right? Is that we're committed, we're a team, we're moving down through time as a team together. And then, the only way that we can get to that wall of commitment is by having that wall of trust. And trust happens on a multitude of levels, right? Will you be there and pick me up from my appointment when you say you will? Right? I just had a couple last week where he came 2 hours late, and she was devastated, and that's a big deal, right? Or can I trust you to be a good parent to our kids? Can I trust you with my emotions, that if I'm vulnerable and I share something with you, you're not going to hold it against me or use it against me, or you're going to be able to kind of catch me and be a safety net for me. And then, of course, some of the stereotypical ones is like fidelity. Can I trust that you'll be faithful to me? And, I mentioned that question last week. The question we all ask ourselves, whether we realize it or not, is, will you be there for me? And if we can answer pretty fully that, yes, my partner's there for me, then we can move on to the commitment wall. But if we're struggling in that area, we've got to go back to the 7 principles of the Sound Relationship House and start to work those, because those are what makes relationships work. And these were all things that John observed from real couples. He didn't decide to create something and tell people to do it. He observed healthy couples and unhealthy couples and realized what works and what doesn't. The science told him, and it makes sense.
So as you talk about kind of building up into those levels of the Sound Relationship House, the very first one, building love maps, we talked about it last time, where it's kind of like almost like it doesn't have to be in the dating phase, but it's what we typically associate with a dating phase. And sometimes in marriage we forget to update, and we forget to...
And that's the problem.
That's the problem.
Because when we were dating, I used to matter to you. Now that we're married, I feel like I don't matter anymore, because you're not asking me those questions. Right? You're not updating our love maps. You're not showing appreciation, whatever that is. And that can be very painful and hurtful, because love maps are about how well we feel known by our partner and how well we feel we know our partner. And these little moments are huge. And one of our mottos is, in the mundane lies the profound. Don't ever underestimate the mundaneness of your day when it comes to sharing it with your partner. Nobody else might care, but it should matter to each other. And being curious and asking open-ended questions create a huge connection and a huge friendship. I matter to you. And John says, 5 or 10 minutes every day is fine. You don't have to sit down there for 3 hours. You just, when you come home and one spouse is making dinner and the other one's sitting there, you can talk about your day. Or you can wait until after the kids go to bed and talk about your day. Things like that. And one of the other mottos is doing the little things often. These small little things really add up. And I don't know if we talked about it or not, but doing a big thing and doing a small thing, they're all only worth one ding. right? And this is where we get mixed up. We feel like if we take our partner on some big holiday and spend, $10,000, that's going to hold them for years. No. That's just created a lot of great memories that we can look back on, and it created some more closeness in that moment. But then when you come home, if you ignore each other or turn away, that all gets obliterated.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
In those ways, you can't necessarily build up credit. Okay? There is some ways to build up credit by turning towards, but it's a constant kind of motion that takes place. But getting back to the love maps, it's just about checking in with each other, being curious, and asking open-ended questions. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, how was your day? Good, bad, that's a closed-ended question. But then follow it up with, how was your day? Or tell me, how was your day? Tell me about your day. Anything interesting happened today?
Yeah.
And you're just being curious and digging for things and like, oh, yeah, I guess there was something. And like I said, you don't, it's not like you watch these fireman movies where crazy fires are happening and life threatening, you don't need stories like that. You just need to share with your partner what went on.
Yeah.
And that creates closeness.
Yeah, that's good.
So that's kind of love maps.
I really love, on my phone I have this app because I love that the Gottmans have an app. It's called Gottman Card Decks. Yep. And they have love maps on there.
Yep.
They have questions, like I even just pull up a random one, like what are your partner's hobbies? Where was your partner born? What stresses are facing your partner in the immediate future? And then part of the intention with that is, can you answer that about your partner? And if you can't, then maybe there are some questions you need to ask to rebuild or to update your love maps, right? And one of the things that I love is that when Alyssa and I go out on a date, if we're out to eat and we're sitting at a restaurant or something, we'll often pull out the Gottman card deck and we'll just use these as primers for conversation and just kind of ask some of these open-ended questions that are like, hey, what is happening in your day? Like, is there anything meaningful that you're really worried about or you're stressing about? Because we can go through our day and we live our maybe sometimes even compartmentalized life between work and school and church or hobbies or sports, and we can forget that we need to connect all of those back to the relationship, right?
Well, I was just doing a session this week with a couple of physicians, and I had got them to do the love maps, and they were supposed to get all 60 of the questions done, and I think they got through 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And so I was going to chide them a little bit, but then they said it took us a while because we started talking more in depth and we started to go down these different paths. And I said, you know what? That's actually better.
Yes.
When we ask a question like that without just getting the answer, but we talk about where that came from, a silly little one is, what's your favorite tree? There's some history behind that. Like, my favorite tree is a willow tree, and I used to go to my grandparents' place in Summerland, and we meet my cousins, and we'd sleep under the willow tree under the stars, and I have great memories from that. Yeah. That's about getting to know each other. The tree is sort of, whatever, but it's what's around it. So having conversations, going deeper. I thought your 2 best friends was Marie and Micah. Well, Micah and me, we've kind of had a falling out over the last couple of weeks. Well, talk to me. And then that can create some really good connection. And just getting to know each other. And if you don't know the answer, but you're doing the love maps, now you do. Yeah. And your partner's going to feel closer to you for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love what they say, because we've done this a couple of times with couples, and we do the love map stuff, and we always stress, and I know that when you guys teach it, you guys stress the same thing, that it's not a quiz for you to get every answer necessarily correct.
It's not a competition.
It's not a competition. It's whenever you don't know the answer, like you said, it's an opportunity to learn the answer.
Right.
And to learn to grow deeper in love. And I think something that's super simple, like the 5 W's that we learn, who, what, when, where, why, right? So if you talk about what's your favorite tree, like the willow tree, I just learned, what were your grandparents like? You had your cousins that slept over. How often did you go? What is Summerland like?
Right.
All of these other who, what, when, where, why questions that started off with, my favorite tree is a willow tree, and then you can really explore to learn somebody's life.
And that can take a lifetime.
Yes.
And that's a good thing, because that means you got something to talk about for a lifetime.
Yeah.
Most people, they did this study, I think it was the LA Times, and they had suggested that the majority of couples are only spending 35 minutes a week in conversation.
Wow.
That was it. 35 minutes of direct conversation.
A week.
Yeah. So wow. I didn't check exactly how they did it or whatnot, but it was talked about in a lot of different circles.
Yeah.
We get so busy, we're doing everything for our kids, we forget about our partner, and it's just, we're running amok, and that connection that we need is not happening.
Wow. When we love our partner, when we learn to love all of those parts of our partner, the history, the backstories, the joys, the pains, all that other stuff, I think that's what helps us build into the kind of fondness and admiration that really helps the relationship grow, that we have this positive perspective. And that's kind of what I want to get into, for the last portion of our episode here, is talking about, building the positive perspective. Because something that I really has just stood out to me ever since I took the classes with you on the Gottman stuff was the negative sentiment override and the positive sentiment override. I think at that time, it wasn't, I don't know, I felt like it wasn't too severe for me, but I felt like there were elements of negative sentiment override that I was stuck in my relationship. And when I learned that, I was like, oh wow, I am stuck in aspects of this negative sentiment override. And so I wanted you to kind of tell our listeners, tell our watchers, what is the negative sentiment override? What is positive sentiment override? And kind of what are the impacts on our relationship? So the positive sentiment override just means that there's a lot of being in the positive perspective suggests that there's a lot of positive sentimental override, which is just a fancy way of saying there's more positivity than negativity. Uh-huh. And when we're in this state, we are actually seeing all positive words and behaviors coming from our partner as being positive. Uh-huh. We're seeing all neutral words and behaviors as being positive. And when something negative does happen, we see it for what it actually is. There's no embellishment, there's no hypersensitivity, exaggeration, and we just take that negative moment and just deal with it effectively. Yeah. But the negative perspective, where there's a lot of negative sentimental override, is we are missing 50% of the positive words and behaviors that our partner is actually saying and doing. Uh-huh. All neutral words and behaviors are seen as negative. And when something negative does happen, we see it as being really, 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 really negative. There's a lot of hypersensitivity, embellishment, and it goes to hell in a handbasket very quickly. So this was backed up by some studies that were done quite a few years ago at the University of Oregon, where these researchers went in and followed these couples that were not doing well, okay? And who were in the negative perspective. And what they did is they gave them a sheet of paper to keep score for the time that they were with them, a couple days or whatever. And there was just two columns, positive column, negative column. When something positive happens, positive check mark. Negative happens, positive or negative. And what was interesting is that the researchers were watching them continually and keeping their own score. And so when they calculated everything at the end of this research, they found out that these couples who are in the negative perspective missed over half the positive behavior and words that their partner was saying. It went right over their head, or they put a negative spin on it. So you made me my favorite meal. Okay, you're wanting something now. And they were cynical, skeptical. Or, you brought me some flowers. Okay, what did you do now? How did you mess up? Yeah. And they were just there. It was just this negative spin that was put on it. And that would show that you're in the negative perspective. Yes. And a number of years ago, I was talking to John about this, and I kind of created this handout that I give my couples that really resonate with them. And there's five kind of things that
can show whether you're in the negative perspective or not.
Okay.
Can I go through them?
Yeah,
okay.
please.
And so the first one is hypervigilance.
Okay.
And this is where we're scanning each other for things to criticize instead of things to appreciate.
Yes.
And the whole idea is that as human beings, we kind of look at the negatives. Like, I don't know if you know this, but in the dictionary, there are 4 times as many words of negative affect as there is a positive affect. It's just kind of human nature. We watch the news, right? Especially today. The news is almost all negative with a few fluff pieces. And if it was all fluff pieces, we wouldn't watch it.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I try and get my couples to do is to catch each other doing something right and let them know. But the idea is you're going to find whatever you're looking for. So what we're doing when we're in that critical habit of mind, we're trying to catch our partner doing something wrong to back up our negative opinion about them.
Yes.
And we're like, yeah, okay, there he is doing that again, or yep, she's doing that like clockwork.
Yeah.
So we've just confirmed our negative belief or perspective about our partner.
Yeah. It's like a form of emotional confirmation bias.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And then the second one is hypersensitivity. And this is where we kind of put on these emotional magnifying goggles. And remember, in all relationships, negative stuff happens. But when we're in the negative perspective, what we'll do is we'll take a 1 or 2 or 3 out of 10 on the negative scale, and we'll see it or magnify it or experience it like an 8 or a 9 or a 10 out of 10. So we feel more hurt than we should. We feel more rejected than we should. We feel more angry than we should. And it's this magnification that gives us this really negative view of our partner, and that helps keep us in the negative perspective. Okay?
Yeah.
And then the next one is we don't tend to let things roll off our back. We don't tend to just kind of sweep it off. So in our relationships, there are darts that kind of hit us all the time. It's like, ow, that kind of hurt when my partner said that. And another one will happen, hits us. Now, if we're in the positive perspective, we're sweeping them off as they come because we're coming up with good reasons. We're not taking it personally. But when we're in the negative perspective, we let them all add up and we wear it like a badge of honor. And we're like, look at all these things that you do to me. And we get into the quid pro quo kind of frame of mind. And that is a legal term which means tit for tatness.
Yeah.
We become emotional accountants and we keep score. And what the research shows, if we're ever keeping score in our relationship, that is indicative of a distressed relationship. Love does not keep score.
Yes.
And fairness does not mean equalness.
Yes.
So fairness means you do enough. I love you for what you do. You pull your weight around here, and I am happy and content with it. Where equalness is, well, I did this around the house for 3 hours today. You need to do 3 hours as well. Or you bought something for yourself for $500. I'm going to go and buy myself something for $500. So that tit for tatness, that keeping score, is really, really unhealthy.
Yeah.
Now, so there's a couple, we were talking about rituals of connection. There's a couple that decided to create a new ritual of connection that they weren't doing before. And it was just simply to give each other a hug and a kiss before they left each other for the day. And so one morning, the wife looks around and the husband's gone. And they'd been doing it for about about 2 weeks. And she got really upset and she started texting him. If you're in the negative perspective, that's what you're going to do. Texting him, seriously, you couldn't even do this for more than 2 weeks? Do you even care about this relationship? I can't believe how inept you are. Or she gets on the phone and just tears into him. But if she's in the positive perspective, she steps back and she goes, oh, you know what? He didn't sleep well last night. He has to interview these 2 clients that are totally arrogant, total jerks, and the boss is the only person that trusts him to do that. I think he was just kind of worried about it and wasn't really thinking and left because he's so focused on that, poor guy. And she then sweeps it off.
Yeah.
That's what we do when we're in the positive perspective. We grant each other some grace. We show flexibility. We try and understand what our partner's going through. It makes sense?
Yeah, totally.
And then the fourth one is, it's sort of similar to this one, but we when we're in the negative perspective, we don't give each other the benefit of the doubt. So the benefit of the doubt, there's a couple of definitions, but the benefit of the doubt is that we believe that our partner takes us into account and they're thinking about us through most every day, and they'll consider us in their decisions appropriately. But in this other scenario that we're talking about, when we're in the positive perspective, we'll come up with positive reasons or excuses why our partner might be in a certain mood, and we don't take it personally and we don't go and confront them. So say that your wife is kind of in a bad mood one Sunday morning, and instead of going up and saying, listen, we've been working so hard on this, I've been learning so much from Lawrence in our time together. And I've shared it with you. You should be doing a lot better. No, I'm kidding. So instead of going up to her and saying, okay, what did I do now? And kind of, is it my fault? What we do is we step back and we go, I know that she had a negative conversation with one of her family members last night. She's probably still upset. She needs time to process that. I'm just going to back off and let her be until lunch. And if she's still in not a great mood, I'm going to say, hey, sweetie, talk to me. What's going on? But that's what giving the benefit of the doubt is. We don't go and confront each other. We don't beat each other up over it emotionally. And we grant them, once again, some mercy. Yeah. And then the fifth thing is, we don't tend to bite our tongue. Okay, so when you're in the positive perspective, you bite your tongue at times, literally and figuratively. So contempt can feel so good on the tongue. And it feels good for about 5 seconds after we want to take this shot and just nail our partner, especially when we haven't been getting along or they haven't been treating us well. And if you can bite your tongue for 50, 60, 70 seconds and let that moment pass, we'll be like, whew, I'm glad I didn't say anything, because we'd be fighting now for 3 hours straight or ignoring each other for 3 days. And that takes a lot more energy, and that just creates its own ball of negative wax, so to speak. Right? Now, if that feeling continues for an elongated amount of time, then maybe that is something that we do need to talk about. It's an actual conflict area that we need to talk about, but I teach couples how to bring it up properly, but it's not by taking a shot at their partner. So it's hypervigilance, hypersensitivity, not letting things fall off your back, not giving the benefit of the doubt, and biting your tongue or not biting your tongue are 5 areas that will show whether you're in the negative perspective or not. Now, the interesting part is that we don't work with couples on the negative perspective specifically. It's just an artifact of the other levels that aren't doing well. But what John saw in his research is the quickest way to get back into the positive perspective is to go back to the friendship levels, which are love maps, which asking questions, being curious, fondness and admiration, which is about verbalizing appreciation, and then turning towards your partner's bids. Those are the three levels of friendship, and those are the ones that we want you to focus on. Now, also take in that if we have a lot of negative conflict management, that can affect that as well. But that's the quickest way to get out. Because when you're friends with your partner, your conflict's going to get better, right? Because who wants to learn how to compromise with someone you don't like? So liking first and then moving to conflict is how we generally do it. Although I've had a lot of couples that are really good friends, but they really struggle with conflict still. So every couple's different.
It's different. Yeah, that's good. So we talked about love maps. We talked about sharing fondness and admiration. I know that the Gottmans have I think it's like a 6-week or 7-week guide. It's like a personal thing you do and that you express. So I'm going to link that in the description of this episode, so that if people want to take that challenge of building that positive sentimentality through fondness and admiration, they can do that. And we briefly talked about bids last time as we kind of did an overview, but maybe let's just do a little recap so that people can understand what turning towards instead of away is, especially in this context.
So how we go about getting our needs met in a relationship are by making bids.
Okay.
We make bids for connection. We make bids for sex. We make bids for, some kind of conversation. And anything like, hey, hon, do you want to go for a walk? That's a bid. And our partner will either turn towards us or turn away from us, okay? Or it can be as simple as, wow, wasn't it a beautiful day today? It really was. So these turning towards are small little moments that add huge deposits into the emotional bank account.
Yes.
And the emotional bank account is just this account that's inside of us that is either depleted or is getting filled up or is full of positive moments, and turning towards is the biggest part of this, okay? And I want couples to understand that every day there are hundreds of opportunities to turn towards, and these turning towards take either fraction of seconds or seconds at the most for most of them.
Yeah.
Okay? And it's just acknowledging your partner. We don't even have high standards. We're okay with a grunt, right?
Yeah,
a grunt of an that means you heard me.
Yeah.
That means I matter to you, and I appreciate that. That stuff is really, really important.
Yeah.
But when we ignore our partner or turn away from them, that is called turning away, and that takes out multiple withdrawals out of the emotional bank account.
Yeah.
And why do we do this? Because we're ticked at our partner. They made us angry this morning, so I'm not giving you the time of day. I'm not looking at you I'm not looking at you in the face. I just can't be bothered. Or often we will turn away involuntarily, which means, let's say you're at home and your wife was out doing something and she comes in, and you might even be doing something for her. You might even be doing a turning towards on the computer. And she goes, hey, babe, how are you? And you don't even hear her, and you don't respond.
Yeah.
You didn't mean anything malicious. You had a great morning, you had a great evening, weekend, everything's great. But that will still feel like a turning away. Okay. Because you didn't respond to her and say, hey, I'm good, babe. Now, she may rebid immediately, which means she says, hey, I said, how are you? And you're like, oh, I'm sorry, I got so caught up in this. And that's a good thing to do. But what John saw in his research, that with the disaster couples, they rebid immediately 0% of the time. He never saw one of them go and rebid again. They just turned away, walked away, and then came back at a different time. Yeah. But even the master couples, the healthy couples, the ones that stayed together, they only immediately rebid 20% of the time. So even in healthy relationships, you turn away from your partner, they're probably going to then turn away from you. Yeah. Wow. So that stuff is really, really important.
Yeah. Yeah. And the bids they're really, like you said, they're very simple things. Like they're things that are, I love what you said, like I forget the exact wording, but the power or in the mundane, something along those lines. You said it a while ago.
Oh, yes. It'll come back to me.
Yeah.
But in the mundane lies the profound.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yes. In the mundane lies the profound. And I think that's so true about bids, because bids don't have to be these grand gestures. In fact, they're most often the little things.
They're very small.
They're very small. Like when I talk about this with couples, I often mention something quick, like if you're driving and someone says, "Oh, like, hey babe, look at that house." Right? It's just a bid for a connection, to be on alignment, on the same page, whether it is to laugh at something together, or to admire something together, or to bring some form of connection, like you said, "Hey babe, how was your day?" or hello or good morning, whatever the case is. These are opportunities for the couple to be on alignment, to make an emotional connection, sharing something, whether it's an interaction or an observation or whatever.
It can be just you placing your hand on your spouse's leg as you're driving, and then grabbing your hand for a few seconds. Yeah. Right? That's making a bid. And then, anytime we become interested in something our partner is saying, or we give a positive response, that is a turning towards, and it's super, super important.
Yeah. And as you're saying that, I'm thinking about, like, especially for couples that are married, at least from our Christian perspective, right? that part of this is not, I'm gonna be careful how I say it, but it's not, it all feeds into foreplay, right? Which is like the fondness and admiration, the bids, all of this is feeders for great intimacy.
That's right.
Right? And
right.
when you have a great friendship that has built on those foundations of turning towards instead of away, and the fondness and admiration and the love maps, that's the stuff that increases the intimacy.
Because it's multifaceted, and
Yes.
you got to be doing all these things. If you want to have a great sex life, it's about taking care of all of these levels.
Yes.
Because it just instantly creates that connection where two people want to be connected because of it.
Yes, yeah.
And if we're not doing these things, and we don't do them in order to get that,
Correct.
They're just a natural effect. Is it cause and effect, however you say
Yeah.
that, but they're just a natural effect of you taking care of your relationship.
Yeah, exactly. You know, we want to be intimate with our partner when we do have that friendship. And like you said, it's not a means to an end, but it is finding the joy in a relationship through the turning towards, through the fondness, admiration, through the love maps, right?
Exactly.
That all of these things build, and again, if you look at the sound relationship outs, it's the levels that are building up to a really well-designed, structured house relationship.
Absolutely.
Kind of thing. Yeah, that's great. I think that's probably our time, because I don't want to jump into conflict and stuff yet. I want to save some of that for next time. But yeah, any other final thoughts as we've kind of recapped and thought about, this building that relationship?
Well, just on this love map part, this is really important, especially for guys. You want to fill up that emotional bank account so that you can screw up at times.
Yeah.
Right? Because when you create a safety net by building up this, we can make mistakes. We can forget to do something. Or even say some external tragedy happens and we're not able to connect with our partner like we normally do. We can still go and dip down into that and pull out credit even though we're not connecting like we normally do. So building that up, building it high, is just like a literal bank account. The more you have in it, the more safe and secure you feel. So being intentional about that and really doing those things that matter are important. And, unfortunately, we live in a society today where turning away has never been more profound, if you will, and it all has to do with technology, right? It's so easy to get caught up on the computer, on your phone, games, whatever, and we turn away from our partner, and that's a huge deal. I see it in my office all the time.
Yeah.
So we have to set up rituals. We have to set up schedules. Some couples just say, okay, we're putting our phones away for 2 hours. And that can be difficult. It's like, right? It's like, wow, where's my phone?
Yeah.
And it's tough on all of us, but it has really grabbed us, right? And that doesn't mean what we're doing on our phone is bad or something. No, it's taking us away from each other.
Yeah.
Right? Whatever it is.
Yeah, it can be a barrier to that relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love what you said there, that, we're building up these love banks, and inevitably there are withdrawals. We make mistakes happen, life happens,
right.
Stressors, late nights at work, or just inevitable things that we never foresee.
Yeah.
But if we've taken the time to constantly build up the love maps, inevitably when there's a large or small withdrawal, we're not far into the negative because we've built it up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's good. Well, thank you, Lawrence, for your time today. We really appreciate that conversation. Make sure, again, if you haven't checked out the previous episodes, we really want to encourage you to do that, and join us for our last conversation with Lawrence next time as we talk about conflict management. What does it mean to have healthy conflict? And I love the term you keep using is, how do you fight fair? Right, that's a beautiful term. So we're going to talk about that next time in our next episode, and so you do not want to miss that. We will see you next time. Hey, we want to thank you for tuning in to the CIV podcast, where we get to explore different stories and topics related to faith and spirituality. As you consider how you give this year, we want to encourage you to give to discipleship and evangelism. That not only helps us with our podcast, but it also helps us with all the amazing things that we're doing here at CIV, like the workshops, the trainings, the classes, and the programs that are aiming at creating holistic, healthy disciples who make disciples. Thank you so much for supporting our ministries here at CIV. And as always, don't forget to love God, love people, and serve the world.